listening to the Construction Big Breakfast, where we give you a hearty serving of insider tips and business strategies to help fuel your day so you can thrive in the construction industry. Now, here's your host.
Hi everyone, and thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Tip Top Tim Fitch, and welcome to the latest episode of the Construction Big Breakfast. Today we're going to be diving into a whole long list of really interesting topics, including railway stations as also retail destinations, how local authorities are turning themselves into developers, what the UK can learn about regeneration from Oslo and Australia, and interestingly we're going to talk about film studios right at the end. So joining me today for today's podcast is our very special guest, John Morgan. And welcome to the podcast, John.
Thank you for the invitation, Tim.
You're welcome. Can you give our listeners a little introduction about yourself?
Sure. So I'm John Morgan, one of the directors of Lend Design Architects. Before being at Lend Design, I was at Westfield, as you know, for 13 years. I was director of design there. David Leonard, one of my business partners, was head of design. He left 15 years ago and set up with our other partner, Ian. And I left 7 years ago and joined them in the practice. We've now got 5 offices, in 2 in the UK, 1 in Berlin, 1 in Sydney and 1 in Malaysia. And we work on a huge range of projects across the world.
Really, well John, really excited to have you on the podcast today, and really anyone who's watched this series at all knows what the first question is going to be. So John, what did you have for breakfast?
I came prepared. We're having breakfast now. So, living in Nottingham, obviously I travelled down through St Pancras when I'm coming down to London. And, you know, for someone who works in regenerational projects, you know, the whole King's Cross St Pancras is such a phenomenal example of a project. So I brought you some pastries and muffins, a vegan muffin as well for you as well, so that we can enjoy something that kind of represents regeneration in the city. You know, I know you were heavily involved in the project. You look at what that part of London was like and what the investment has now transformed that part of London into. And for all our international clients, it's the one place in London they want to go and see, and they want to visit and experience and see it and take lessons from that back to their countries.
Yeah, I have to say, I mean, that particular project is quite dear to my heart.
I know.
For all sorts of reasons. Maybe we'll talk about that a bit later. And I'm really interested, because usually I'm a joke now and say, well, now we've had the intro, we'll get back into the meat and potatoes of the podcast. And for those who are vegan, it will be potatoes and potatoes. Yeah. Or in this case,
vegan muffins.
A vegan muffin.
Perfect.
So we're moving forward with the times. I am afraid I had my usual bacon roll from Jude at the taxi shelter in Russell Square this morning. I'm really pleased that she's now opening again at 7 AM. I think we're filming this on the 7th of September, Tuesday, and coming on the tube it felt much more like normal. I mean, most of the children are back at school now. Yeah. People are beginning to come back into London.
Definitely, and we're definitely seeing, I think, because people are going to football matches and pop concert and cricket games, and they're getting used to being in crowds in their, you know, their home life, and therefore they're feeling more comfortable about coming back as well. You know, we've done as a practice a huge amount during lockdown on kind of WhatsApp and on Teams and lots of activities to kind of keep the team culture, and we've just started transitioning now into getting small groups of people together. So we had a group visit to Lavender Farm, we had a group that went for a picnic, we've got a group going paddleboarding, just getting people together in groups of 6 and 8s and 10s before we then get to the point of going out on a Christmas party and all being together, because you appreciate that people are going to have to go through that transition and start to feel comfortable. But you could definitely feel in the city today, you know, as you say, I think the schools going back is a point as well where people feel they're getting back to their normal routines because the children aren't homeschooling at the moment. So you definitely feel that buzz in the city now.
You do, and I think we're all as sort of business leaders, we've got to reset, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've got to reset, and for some people I think it's more of a worry coming back together than others. And you probably see with we're filming this in our office today, which is we started doing the last few weeks, and a few people are in, you can see. But of course nowadays we've learned to work in a hybrid fashion.
Yeah.
although our office doesn't look very full, we haven't got enough desks for everyone.
Yeah.
Because we actually grew during the lockdown, so like everyone else, you've got to work out the new normal.
I think, as we said, coming and doing these type of activities face to face, so many people now are sick of Teams. We've got clients now who are saying, okay, we want to see you now, we want to meet you, we want to have a workshop as well, and that's just brilliant to kind of see that coming through as well.
Yeah, it does. I do feel we're at the is it the end? Yeah, the start of the end or something.
Yeah.
One of those Churchillian phrases. Anyway, let's just talk about. I mean, your background. You've done. We had a project in common.
Yes.
15 years ago or so, which was the Westfield Shopping Centre, and of course retail, as everyone knows, has mostly suffered really badly during lockdown. What do you see? How's that going to change going forward?
I think it's obviously a huge change, which brings, I think, for our team, the huge opportunity of innovation as well. And there are definitely clients who got incredibly nervous and were, for a long time, were sitting back waiting for the good old days to come back. And there were others who just grasped the nettle and went for it and saw this is the change, it's never going back there. And that's through, I guess, a series of different, changes. Firstly, obviously, retailers changing as well. And, the press love to write about negativity, about closures, and not write about all the positivity in the openings. I know on these podcasts you focus on the positive, and I think that's definitely something we do in our projects, is finding those positives in a place that they are the foundations to then build on. So you build your high street on the back of the positives you've got within there. And there are so many great business and entrepreneurs now that are getting the ability to get space. There was a time when rents were so high, it wasn't accessible for so many people to be able to start business, or to be able to be on the high street, or to be able to kind of use their skills. And in some ways, that rebasing of rental levels is giving so many entrepreneurs a huge opportunity there. In that, jumping back to King's Cross, St Pancras initially was filled with lots of kind of mainstream brands. You look at Coal Drops Yard at King's Cross, they want there to be brands in there. We work with an amazing ice cream maker called Julie Fisher, Ruby Violet. Well, she's in the heart of King's Cross, next to Waitrose. Now, there would have been a time that unit would have gone to, Orange or Tie Rack or Sock Shop or something that was venture capitalist backed that could afford to pay a big rent. So I think that's where the opportunity is, all that variety coming back into the high street.
It reminds me of my economics, really.
Okay.
It's Schumpeter's creative destruction of innovation, isn't it? And there's been a big shock to the system, and of course it just resets everything, and new entrepreneurs come through.
Yeah.
Makes it very exciting.
And it's amazing, we definitely, there was so much criticism that the high street and shopping centres become clone towns with the same set of line for retailers. And then we went through this whole phase where we kept going to meet people who wanted us to, come up with a scheme that had a Travelodge, a Lidl or an Aldi, a Costa drive-through, and an Altrincham food market. Now, Altrincham food market is brilliant because it's of Altrincham in Altrincham, but it's not something you can just copy and paste. And I kind of joked at a conference that this became the new lazy. We got this new brief that people just felt was safe and easy. And actually, I don't think there is a safe or easy option anymore. I think it involves a lot of effort and a lot of creativity and thinking to get to the right answer for any town or city centre. It's
very interesting. So just before, in our warm-up before we started, we mentioned we've got a Lux division, and we're seeing with some of our clients there that there's a massive investment going into these hybrid retail experiences that they're trying to develop. So there's more than one reason. Not just to go and buy a dress, but you have a whole experience whilst you're there.
Definitely, and I think the project we worked on, the Westfield project in West London, Westfield London, I worked on the Luxury Village, and I was very honoured to work with Mary Portas with all these luxury brands, with Louis Vuitton, Tiffany, Dior, Gucci, who were all opening for the first time in a shopping centre. They're very used to being on Bond Street or on a high street. And you look now, the work that Mary Portas does now, looking at the kindness economy, and kind of where she's taken the Portas agency in her business and their focus. And they've always been very focused on understanding what the consumer wants as a group. and therefore they get that understanding. You know, on the Kindness Economy podcast, they talk exactly about those things. Whereas, you know, and you know, we did the charity shop, you know, the Mary's Living Giving charity shop in the luxury village. You know, for the first time, test those things, those luxury brands, because those luxury brands need to keep moving. They've always been at the front. You know, you went into the beautiful fitted out shops, then suddenly Zara arrives with beauty fitted out shops, and the clothes were a quarter the price. So therefore, luxury then needs to take another leap forward and keep it ahead as well. So I think for us, it's an incredibly interesting time in terms of retail, and especially that luxury element. You know, we work on a lot of that, you know, especially our Korean projects or duty-free work as well. All those brands going into airports and duty-free as well. There's a huge shift that's coming in that work.
John, you mentioned obviously that you're seeing new developments happening in city centres. You mentioned earlier, whilst we were planning this, around the local authorities acting now as developers. Yeah. They're looking at this as a chance to regenerate their own cities.
Definitely, and it's been phenomenal. You know, when we set up the business, a lot of, you know, coming out of Westfield, a lot of our clients were the big developers naturally, because that was, you know, the industry I've been in. And more we started working for local authorities, where, you know, month after month we were invoicing more local authorities becoming clients. And in some ways, it was because often the developers were pulling out and they were saying this city's not right for us, or, you know, we're focusing on the south of England, not on the north of England. We've got a different investment strategy. You know, Sheffield is an excellent example. You know, Sheffield had development partner, big shopping centre planned, a big John Lewis, you know, new store, you know, car parking, big service yard, all the infrastructure you would expect at a time that, you know, would be seen as positive investment. The council then, you know, were left without a development partner. They had to step in and take control, and David and our team worked for a new master plan for the city. There were separate buildings that could be developed and delivered independently. And the first phase was an office building for HSBC and now CMS law firm. Not a John Lewis store that you would traditionally want as your kind of anchor into a city centre regeneration project. Well, what that delivers is thousands of people who work there, and those people need to buy, you know, sandwiches and vapes and, you know, their dinner to go home with, and they want to go to the galleries and the library and the theatres, and therefore they're bringing that footfall and that life back in. But in some ways it's very easy for local authorities to say, right, we've borrowed money and we've bought our shopping centre, we've borrowed money and we've bought a big chunk of the city, now we're going to be the developer. Actually being the developer is very, very difficult, you know, because the local authorities are realising in some ways how difficult the decisions are, how hard they are to make the schemes to be financially viable and be delivered as well. But we're definitely seeing a wave of local authorities who are getting hold of the situation and doing, you know, incredibly well. You know, I can talk about Sheffield for hours on end. You know, it's incredible what they've achieved now with, you know, build to rent. We've got a small form office building, apartments for sale on site. Radisson signed for a hotel there. You know, all of that regeneration, which is all, you know, from the council taking over. You go to somewhere like Broxtowe Council, who again bought out their joint venture partner developer, took control of the site themselves. They wanted a cinema to be built because that would drive nighttime economy and would get people, you know, back into the town. And we worked with them, and, you know, in some ways as architects, you know, if you run a competition as a council for someone to design a cinema, you're going to choose the pink one, the black one, or the gold one. And we went in and said, okay, well, let's look at this site. Okay, instead of building a cinema, let's build the cinema on half the site. On the other half of the site, give yourselves planning consent for some residential. Okay? And then for the money you get from selling the site with a planning consent for residential, you use that then to build the cinema. And it's exactly what they did. They did they gave themselves a planning application. They then sold the residential site. They appointed us and Bowman Kirkland to build the cinema. That's now opened, fitted out, you know, trading, and is driving footfall. But the council have definitely, and you can see the confidence in those local authorities when they've done it and it's worked. And I think often it's about, if they haven't got the in-house team, surround themselves by the right team who are looking to deliver the agendas that they want to deliver. And I say there's a whole wave, you know, if I look at Sefton Council, very proactive, or Doncaster Council, or Middlesbrough, you can really see it coming forward, which is, you know, is so exciting. And I think they can take a view, whereas if a developer looks at a site, naturally you look inside your red line and your own site ownership that you will understand from projects you've worked on. Whereas as a local authority you can look at the whole town or city and say, okay, well, this isn't the right place for cinema, that should go over here, and the right thing for this to go is here, and they can take a better view. But the key thing is about getting these things to be delivered, to actually see the projects being delivered is the key.
And how are you seeing local authorities plug that sort of skills gap? Because it's very different from being a sort of a local official to being a really successful developer.
Yeah.
And of course they're, like you said, that they've got a slightly broader picture than your typical developer who's obviously trying to make money.
Yeah.
They've got another layer of interest in it.
Definitely, and there are some local authorities who have some great people in there. We have some great clients in local authorities who understand how these get projects put together. The other, thing that happened was Sir John Timpson wrote a government white paper in terms of the High Street. I was very honoured to be interviewed as part of that process, and on the back of that report, the High Street Task Force has been set up, which is chaired by Mark Robinson of Allandi. And therefore they have the ability to go in and give that support to local authorities, that guidance to kind of help them. So the government is, pumping that guidance into these local authorities to help them get the schemes together. You then look at, we've done a huge number of, high street fund applications, transforming cities funds. The government is pumping money into towns and cities to allow them to get the gap funding, to appoint consultants to get projects moving forward in their towns and cities as well. So it definitely feels as a time where the government is incredibly focused and is starting to put the support mechanism in there, and putting someone like Mark Robinson in there who understands development, how to put it together. He can give these local authorities with his team very good guidance.
Yeah, I mean, very exciting times, isn't it? Very exciting times. Yeah, but obviously your practice is international. Is there something the UK can learn from what you've seen the rest of the world doing?
Definitely. I think we talk about this a lot. Pre-lockdown we were very privileged that our team were travelling all over the world and seeing projects, and yes, we were working on WebEx and Zoom, and we work on Teams now, but you definitely learn something. So for example, we had an amazing project we delivered in Copenhagen for Tristan Capital, again prefabricated, residential, and this was 2.5, 3 years ago. Was ahead of where the UK is, and our team learned an incredible amount in delivering that was built and delivered on site. And I was back there every fortnight, while the project was being delivered. Currently we have a lot of work in Oslo, and there are a number of UK funds and some amazing Norwegian funds over there. And again, I think I often say that in Oslo, the developers are genuine about the people who are going to live and work in those developments. In the UK, often developers can, I'm not saying pretend to care, but pay lip service to actually caring about the people who are going to actually be part of the development or live there. But definitely in Oslo, there's a real belief in it, and often when our team have been out there, they come back and say, "Oh, I've seen the future. I've seen what we should be doing here." And I joke that pre-COVID, you could get on a flight to Oslo for less than probably a train ticket to Manchester from London to go and see those things and learn and experience it. And I think there is so much that the UK development market can learn from those projects, because I see in our team, definitely.
That sounds like a real headline for the show notes, which Sarah will pick up on. Interestingly, now we've had a very wide-ranging discussion. Now, right at the start, we teased everyone by saying that we're going to talk about the film industry. So, John, what's happening in the film industry?
Well, I know you saw on our social media feeds that recently we've been involved in we're now involved in a very big film studio project. It's definitely an emerging market that we're seeing, and we're very, very heavily involved in. And I say our team have learned a huge amount and are delivering a huge amount. With the rise of so many streaming services on through Amazon and Apple and Netflix, and even through terrestrial channels, the reality is there is a need to produce this content. We're all binge watching a whole series in a night, whereas it used to take us 6 months or 8 months to watch a whole series, and therefore there is a huge pressure for this content to be delivered, and therefore film studio space is running short, and therefore there is a need for this type of regeneration as well. And therefore there's an opportunity for local authorities because, you know, these massive facilities have lots of jobs. They want to be linked with universities, with the kind of the young tech people and the post-production, the editing and the filming, and you know, it's a huge opportunity for creating jobs within the country that's answering a need and a demand that we're all, you know, addicted to kind of binge watching things as well. So it's really interesting. You know, it's very early days, I guess, as a market. We're very privileged to be heavily involved in it, and I think it's definitely one to watch.
It is. I mean, it was certainly in the papers a week or two ago,
yeah,
because it caught my eye because I live between Leavesden and Pinewood, yeah, and the Osprey's just around the corner.
Yeah.
And the UK is becoming a real centre of the film industry. I think there's more investment going into film studios here than anywhere else in the world, which is amazing, isn't it?
And what an amazing industry for young people to get into. You know, the negativity of sitting on Xbox all day, turn that into a skill and a job and a career that's inspiring and exciting, I think is hugely opportunity.
That's terrific. Well, on that note, let's wrap up this conversation. It's been very insightful, and thank you for joining me today, John.
My pleasure, thank you.
Where can our listeners get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more?
So definitely through our social media channels at Leonard Design, through our website, which is just leonard.design. There's a contact us on that as well. And I think we can probably put into the bio for the podcast as well.
Yeah, well, Sarah will add all that to the show notes, so there'll be no difficulty anyone being able to find you or Leonard Design. Anyway, wonderful. And to all of our listeners today, thank you for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Construction Big Breakfast with John Morgan, me, Tip Top Tim Fitch, and of course the vegan muffin, which is a first. We have a new episode every 2 weeks, although we may increase the frequency. As you say, we are creating more content because people are binge watching our podcasts. Of course, click the subscribe button, turn on your notifications so you don't miss a single episode. While you're at it, we'd appreciate a 5-star review, and if you've enjoyed this episode today, please like it, share it, tell your friends, even in the old-fashioned way, as this helps us get more viewers and listeners. If you're interested in being a guest on this podcast, and you can see John's had a wonderful time, or looking to collaborate in other ways, visit our website. That's www.invent2ends@the-end.com. The link's also in the description, and fill out the contact form, and Sarah or one of our team will be in touch, and see you next time.
Want to learn more about how Invent can help your business maximize its bottom line? Head on over to www.invent.com and get in touch with our team today. Thanks for joining us this week on the Construction Big Breakfast. Make sure to visit our website, www.invent.com, where you can subscribe to the Construction Big Breakfast on all platforms so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a positive rating. Or if you'd simply share it with a friend, that would help us out too. Be sure to tune in for our next episode.